In the heart of an old, abandoned house lived a teenage boy named Kyle. He had a passion for history and would often go through his family's belongings looking for anything related to it. One day he found an old wooden chest tucked away in the attic. Curiosity got the better of him, and he opened it. Inside was a yellowed envelope sealed with wax. Felt like something important, maybe even a secret. With shaking hands, Kyle broke the seal. Inside was a brittle piece of paper with spidery handwriting. As he unfolded it, the room seemed to dim, and an unnatural chill crept up his spine. It was a chain letter, something about forwarding it to 10 friends in 24 hours or facing a dreadful curse. At first, he thought it was just a story, a modern-day myth. But then he noticed something, a date written at the bottom of the letter. And when he turned it over, there was another date, the next day's date. Kyle's blood ran cold. Was this some sick joke played by his late grandfather, who had a penchant for the macabre? Or was there something more sinister at play? Time ticked by. Now alone in his room, Kyle wrestled with fear and skepticism. Should he believe in the curse? What if it was real? What if his grandfather had a darker side no one knew about? Pondering these questions, he decided to not ignore the warning. Maybe it was just a story. After all, what harm could come from reading a chain letter? So he read it aloud, his voice echoing in the silent room. A week went by and nothing happened. Relief washed over Kyle. Maybe it was all just a bunch of superstitious nonsense. Then the whispers started. At first he dismissed them as figments of his imagination, but they grew louder, more persistent. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, mocking him in a language he couldn't understand. Sometimes he could have sworn he heard his name being called in a voice that was both familiar and chillingly distorted. He tried to shake it off as stress, but then the lights began to flicker, and the shadows in the corners of his eyes took on shapes of their own. One evening he was writing in his journal, documenting the strange happenings, when he noticed a peculiar shadow on the wall. Startled, he watched as it moved, slithered and writhed. Just as suddenly, it vanished. He rubbed his eyes, thinking he had been seeing things. But when he looked up, he saw a faint outline of a hand on the wall, moving as if someone was trying to grab hold of something that wasn't there. His breath hitched in his throat. Could this be the curse manifesting itself? Was he losing his mind? Kyle, desperate for an explanation, showed his friends the letter and told them about the eerie happenings. They listened intently, exchanging worried glances. "Let's just think about this logically," said Sarah, always the voice of reason. "Chain letters aren't exactly known for causing curses." "But what if this one's different?" asked Tom, his voice hushed. Kyle couldn't help but agree. They decided to take action. If this was a curse, he needed to break the chain. So he started writing another letter, ready to pass it on. But as he dipped his pen in ink, the room grew colder and the whispers intensified. Panic clawed at his throat. Was it already too late? Had he waited too long to heed the warning? Trembling, he finished the letter and addressed it to one of his friends. He placed it in an envelope, sealed it, and with shaking hands, wrote down the next day's date. Relief washed over him as he did this, a physical manifestation of his hope to escape the curse. The following day, he anxiously awaited his friend's reply. Was the chain broken? Did he manage to avoid the curse? But instead of a letter, he received a frantic phone call. His friend's voice trembled over the phone. "Kyle, I haven't sent you a letter. Why are you doing this to me? I didn't ask for this." Confusion clouded Kyle's face. What was she talking about? Before he could respond, the line went dead. Confused and scared, Kyle raced to his friend's house. Her parents answered the door, their faces etched with worry. "Where's Jenny?" he asked, his voice tight with concern. "She's not here," her mother replied, her gaze distant. "Jenny left home yesterday after receiving a letter. She hasn't returned since." Chills snaked down Kyle's spine. Could it be? Was the curse spreading? Fear propelled him into action. He grabbed his bike and raced to his next friend's house. This time, the parents weren't home, but Kyle found his friend sitting in a corner. Eyes wide with terror, muttering incoherently. "What's wrong?" Kyle rushed to his side, helping him up. His friend's eyes darted around frantically. "The letter, the curse, it's coming," he stammered. "You have to believe me." Kyle realized that the curse was real, should have listened to the letter. Now it was spreading to everyone he cared about. Kyle made a mental note to visit his other friends, but then he got a call from his sister. Her voice sounded strained and frightened. "I need your help," she whispered. "Something terrible has happened." Rushing to her side, he found her in tears, babbling about a horrifying experience. "It was the letter," she cried, clutching his arm. "I read it and now he's gone." Kyle's heart sank. Who was gone? His sister, still sobbing, pointed to an empty chair in the corner. On it lay a crumpled piece of paper. Slowly, Kyle unfolded it. It was the letter. But what chilled him to the bone were the words scrawled at the bottom. "I am coming for you." This wasn't just a chain letter. It was a summons, a harbinger of doom. Was his sister possessed? Had the curse claimed her? Kyle struggled to comprehend the chaos that seemed to be unraveling around him. Days turned into a blur of fear and uncertainty. Everyone he knew who had received the letter was now missing or acting strangely. Desperate for answers, Kyle sought out his grandfather's old journals. Maybe there was something in his writings that could shed light on the cryptic chain letter. As he pored over the aged pages, he discovered an entry dated the same day the letter was found. His grandfather's handwriting, usually so neat, was wild with terror. He wrote about a cursed chain letter, its sinister origins, and the dire consequences of ignoring its warning. The letter, according to his grandfather, was a conduit to a malevolent entity that thrived on fear and despair. Once summoned, it would relentlessly pursue its victims, preying on their deepest fears and ultimately claiming their souls. His grandfather had clearly taken the threat seriously, devising elaborate rituals and incantations to ward off the curse. But despite his efforts, there was a palpable sense of dread that permeated his final entries. Hinting at the inevitable triumph of the dark force, Kyle's blood ran cold. The curse was real and it was growing stronger. He had to act fast. He needed to find a way to stop it, to break the chain before it was too late. Kyle remembered his grandfather's journal mentioning an ancient ritual that could banish evil entities. It was a risky, perilous journey. But Kyle was desperate. He had to try. Traveling to the secluded cottage, Kyle began the ritual. Air grew heavy, the silence deafening. Suddenly, the walls of the cottage seemed to pulsate with an eerie green glow. An unearthly wind howled through the trees outside, carrying with it whispers that promised pain and suffering. Kyle's heart pounded in his chest. Was he truly on the verge of banishing the curse? As he uttered the final words of the incantation, the room filled with a blinding light. When Kyle regained his sight, the cottage was silent, the eerie glow vanished. Had he done it? Was the curse broken? Relief washed over him, but it was short-lived. From the corner of his eye, he saw a figure emerge from the shadows. It was tall and gaunt, its features obscured by the darkness. "Who are you?" Kyle asked, his voice trembling. The figure stepped forward, revealing a face twisted with malice and eyes that burned with an otherworldly fire. "I am the embodiment of fear," it rasped, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. "And you have disturbed my slumber." Terror gripped Kyle as he realized he had made a grave mistake. He hadn't broken the chain. It only angered the entity that lay at its heart. The creature lunged, and Kyle screamed. The last thing he saw was the creature's triumphant grin, bearing rows of sharp, glistening teeth. Did Kyle manage to escape the curse grasp, or did he become another victim of the malevolent entity? The truth lay dormant in the shadows, waiting to be unleashed. Would anyone ever break the curse of the last chain, or would it continue to haunt unsuspecting victims for eternity? The answer, shrouded in mystery, echoed through the annals of time, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks just beyond our perception.